Hello, everyone. So today I wanted to make a short video and talk a little bit more about grief. I did make a video over the weekend and I forgot to say a few things, and so I didn't actually send it out. Um, this is in response to a request to talk about grief during this time of quarantine and the COVID-19 pandemic, and how maybe we can think about grief and work with it from a spiritual perspective, also taking into account the subtle energy and holistic medicine concepts. So in that video, I did a short guided meditation, and we're going to do something similar here at the end, but there was several things that I wanted to include, and whether or not you watch that video or not, it doesn't really matter. This is a standalone video. So the first thing about grief is that in Chinese medicine, it's related to the lungs. And the lungs govern the Wei Qi. And the Wei Qi is you could consider it an equivalent of the immune system. So the idea of the immune system is coming from microbiology, and it's actually quite complex to really understand. But I like to compare everything sort of as apples and oranges. So as far as the similarities and differences between Eastern and Western medicine. I will say this, though, that our understanding of the immune system from a Western new biology standpoint is quite a bit different than what even most medical doctors are taught in school. The last 20 years of research into the immune system has brought to light a whole host of factors that we are just beginning to understand, really just beginning to really glimpse what's going on. And I'm talking about the microbiome, all of the millions and perhaps billions of bacteria that are coexisting with you in your body, and the microvirome. And viruses are actually different than bacteria. They're not cellular organisms. They're actually more like RNA expressions coming out of nucleuses of cells and communicating. So viruses are actually part of how we communicate with each other. And that's very interesting, but I'm not an expert, and so we'll leave it at that. The immune system has many layers to it. So again, we have bacteria and virus-like RNA. We have different kinds of cells that are produced that fight off different kinds of, that will fight off different things or promote inflammation in the body in order to help heal things. And it's really quite complex. If you're interested in that, I would suggest checking out Thomas Cohen's work and Sieradski's recent book that was just published, actually just came out today, called Rejuvenate. And I'll try to include links to those if I can figure out how with this video when it goes out. But from a Chinese perspective, we talk about Wei Qi, and Qi, again, is often translated as subtle energy, although there isn't really a good translation for Qi, because depending on the context, Qi can mean so many things. It can be talking about emotions, it can be talking about weather, it can be talking about cosmological processes, it can be talking about subtle spiritual processes, or sort of mystical experiences and the understanding of how reality is created, and so forth. So it can get quite subtle, and it can also be very ordinary, like the weather. So it's really not a good translation for Qi, but Wei Qi, we can translate it as the protective chi of the body. And so what does that mean? Well, it's likened to a sort of a electrical or electromagnetic field around the body that helps to repel things that would cause harm and helps to sort of hold in the good stuff. And so over the body and then also over all of the vessels, you imagine that each vessel inside the blood flows, and also we call the nutritive chi flows, the chi of, basically we could say in a biochemical formulation, the oxygen, the nitrogen, other things that come in when we breathe that go into our blood, and then also all of the nutrients from our food, so all of the vitamins and enzymes, amino acids, and so forth. All of this stuff is this nutritive chi that's flowing in the blood, as well as aspects of the immune system we know are in the blood, the different kinds of lymphocytes and other white blood cells and so forth. So the Wei Qi is this protective chi that covers the body. And the lungs are the organ that is related to this Wei Qi. So when the lungs are strong, when the lungs are healthy, then our immune system is healthy. And when the lungs are weak, due to perhaps grief, our immune system actually becomes weak. So that's the first thing I wanted to say, was that now you might be feeling grief. And that's okay. And we'll talk about more about that. But notice that, how does that feel as far as your robustness? Do you feel protected when you're feeling sad, or are you kind of more focusing on a deeper process? And just notice that if you're sad, maybe it is time to do things to help support your immune system. We want to do that anyway. We're in a pandemic. But especially if you're feeling sad, you want to do things that help support your immune system. And I covered some of these, but briefly, good diet. Cut out inflammation, cut out sugar. Cut out the booze, the cheap oil, the fast food. Oh, it's probably hard to get fast food. Maybe the fast food places are doing well, actually. Who knows? I don't eat there. Get plenty of rest, sleep, exercise, go outside, right? And try to regulate your nervous system. Those were the four main things that I talked about. All of those things will help your immune system. They'll help your lung qi. They'll help your Wei qi, okay? That's important. So, grief. From a interpretation that comes out of Tibetan Buddhist teachings, each of the so-called afflicted emotions is related to a wisdom energy. And grief is associated with the wisdom energy of compassion, selfless love and compassion. Why is that? Well, when you're sad, it's because you miss something that you love. Now, it could be that the security that you had presumed that your life had now feels like it's been taken away from you, and you miss that. That's a possibility. I know I kind of feel that way. Although I have to say that I'm not terribly surprised this is happening, but nonetheless, it's such global impact that it's hard not to feel a bit insecure. Also, you might feel sad because you love other beings and you see them suffering, and you wish that you didn't have to, or that they didn't have to suffer, and that you didn't have to experience the suffering of those whom you love, and that makes you sad. So, or whatever version of grief that you have, the loss of a loved one, the loss of an opportunity, the loss of maybe what you thought your children's future was going to look like, the loss of a job, the loss of income, etc. There are many things that can be lost that we miss them because we loved some aspect of them or what they represented to us. So because of our love, which is a wisdom, we feel the grief. And so there's an opportunity here. Like all suffering, it brings opportunity, spiritually speaking. And I've spent a lot of time over the last couple of weeks. I seem to be unable to stop myself from trying to understand the structural aspects of what's going on. And to some extent, that's not the most useful thing to be doing. I think it is useful to understand what's going on in a way that you can then make useful decisions. And since I have a family, my children are teenagers, I have to be able to make the right decision for them. But there is a limit to what I can do, what my power is. For instance, I can't, stop people in positions of power from making the decisions that they're making if I disagree with them, and that goes for any time in general. I can vote, and that's one thing I can't do, and I can call my representatives. That's another thing that I've done that I can do. But my ability to actually do something is somewhat limited, and so that energy that I have to try to protect my family, it has to kind of come to a rest once I've made the decision that I can make. And what I find sometimes is that because I sense so much suffering or potential for suffering, or I fear their suffering, in the case of my children, that energy ends up kind of going into the grief. It feeds the grief in a way. And this is actually a relationship in Chinese medicine between the liver and the lungs, which is very interesting. The liver is the general, and the general's job is to guide the troops and get up and go and do stuff and move the energy of the body, the life force, in a smooth way. Smooth movement of qi in the body is the job of the liver. So that energy, especially in the spring, is very strong. Spring is the time of growth. It's the time of liver, time of the wood element, upward movement, and new things. And at this time, that energy, because of the pandemic, is slightly blocked. I can't do all of the normal things I do at work. I can't do all of the things that I wish I could do to protect my family. And so there's a lot of extra energy that can be frustrated. And in my case, I can feel that old pattern, this old pattern that I have of the frustration moving into deeper grief, deeper sorrow. And they call this in Chinese medicine the liver overacting on the lungs. So these are some of the factors at play, at least that I'm noticing. How can we work with them, spiritually speaking? Well, the first thing to get the liver qi moving is most important is exercise. So I've been doing lots of qigong, lots of tai chi. I took the dog on an almost 10-mile walk on Sunday, and I'm taking my saunas. So I'm trying to detoxify the liver and move that qi. And that helps. It does. It helps quite a bit. But the second thing is to accept that I have limitations. I can only do so much. And that when I'm done with what I can do, I should just relax and go back to the don't know mind, which I talked about in the last big video I sent out. But you might find, as I have found some in my experience, that there's still a sadness. Sadness remains. And so, as I said, sadness is a flavor of love. It's actually a flavor of love. So if we recognize that, it becomes a little less scary. And then we can start to really feel into what it feels like in our body. For me, I feel it in my chest, at the center of my chest usually, or the whole chest. And it's related to the lungs, like I said, which are in the chest, and the heart's in between there's 2 lobes of the lung on the left and 3 lobes of the lung on the right for most people. And the heart sits slightly off center in the chest to the left. So the lungs are around the heart, and sadness is felt to me to be sort of a weight around or on the heart. The heart itself in Chinese medicine is associated with joy, but can also be anxiety if fear is arising, which is related to the kidneys, the adrenal glands, can be overstimulating to the heart, and there can be anxiety. So it's possible to have grief and anxiety and frustration and underlying fear all at once. In fact, maybe that's a better description of what I've been feeling. So, but let's talk about grief a little more. And so we're going to basically want to directly face the feeling. So in mysticism, we don't run away from our feelings. We turn and we face them. We turn and face reality. Mysticism is about radical empiricism. What is actually going on right now? The thoughts that you're having in your head are descriptions. They're commentary. They can be useful to draw our attention. They can be useful to communicate, in that they can lead to speech and communication. But fundamentally, they are making distinctions, which bifurcates our experience. Our experience is one thing, meaning it cannot ultimately be put into words, because it cannot ultimately be indicated through distinctions which divide into at least 2 things. Even if I have the thought, the sky is cloudy, that thought indicates something that, let's take something simpler. The sky is cloudy is actually my thought from the last video that's going to help you get to the sky, mental sky that's not cloudy. This is a computer mouse. So if I label this mouse, I've drawn an imaginary boundary around the mouse, and everything that's not this is not mouse. So right away there's a distinction between mouse and not mouse, and that's useful. So when I say pick up the mouse, you don't think I'm talking about a rodent. You know that I'm talking about this mouse, because you know that this is also called a mouse. And if we didn't have any language, we wouldn't be able to talk about anything. You wouldn't know what the mouse is from a house, from a Toyota Camry, or anything, right? It would all, anyway, it wouldn't work very well as a human being. So we need this function of language. But it divides the world, mouse and everything that's not mouse. And so in order to really get into our grief, what we need to do is drop our stories about what's going on. And by that I mean allow our thoughts to pass and to become spacious and pervasive. So this is a meditative technique called spacious awareness that grows out of choiceless awareness, and it's a little bit of an advanced technique, but I'll walk you through it. So we're going to start by orienting to, and I'm going to do a quick version. We're going to start by orienting to first our body field. So we feel our seat, we feel our feet, our back if we're in a chair. We notice what it feels like to be in a body. Then we let our attention go out to whatever space we're in. The room, in this case. We look around and we notice we're in a room. And I can look and I can see outside through the window over there. And so my attention is actually going to go all the way to the horizon through the window. So we just orient to whatever space we're in. And we leave our eyes open so that we're aware of the space. And then we notice what our thoughts are doing. So as soon as I said that, of course, my thoughts stopped. But if I waited long enough, they would start up again. But so I'm going to give you a thought. I already told you which one it's going to be. The sky is cloudy. So watch that thought. Notice that thought. The sky is cloudy. And it's gone. But you might have recreated it. The sky is cloudy, the sky is cloudy, the sky is cloudy. Notice that. That's actually repetition. Separate thoughts. They're distinct, they're discrete, and your mind is just repeating them. One of my friends asked me to talk a little bit more about thoughts being not true. This is why thoughts are not true. No thought can be true because from a mystic's perspective, that which is true must persist. It must exist in all times, under all circumstances, ultimately. Ultimately. And thought doesn't. Now that doesn't mean it's not powerful. In fact, the argument could be made that it's the most powerful thing. But it's also ephemeral. It's not real. It's actually not the most powerful thing, but it borrows from that which is the most powerful thing, which is the light of awareness, and it bifurcates it. And through its like a prism, through this prismatic action, it creates this vast display of a world, and a story of I, and it's fascinating, fascinating. So, but without getting into all that philosophy and where that might take us in our practice, we're going to come right back to the nitty-gritty, which is grief. So once we've learned how to let thoughts go, the sky is cloudy, and we're in our body, we feel our body, feel our seat, feel our feet, and we're aware of the space, physical space around us, we can do this practice. That's the quick version of choiceless awareness. So we're in the space of awareness. And it's choiceless because we're not choosing one thought or one object or whatever. We're just letting what arises be there. And we're relaxed. We let go. We sit back. We relax. And if we feel grief, we let our attention go to the sensation of grief. Now, if you need to generate a little grief through a story, you can do that. You can think about why you're sad. The pandemic is destroying the economy all over the world. The rich are getting richer and the poor are getting poorer. My children's future is uncertain. So then we feel the sorrow. We feel it and we drop the story about it. Forget about that. Let it go. The sky is cloudy. Space. Sensation. The naked sensation. You might feel it somewhere else. Your throat, your stomach. Doesn't matter where. Wherever it is fine. In fact, wherever you feel it is perfect. That's exactly where you should be feeling it for you. And to go there with your attention, it does take courage. That's the key to this practice, besides having the willingness and the spaciousness. You have to have the courage to go directly to the naked sensation itself. And if you can stay with that sensation, whatever grief feels like for you, see if you can notice the love underneath it, the love that's behind it, the love and the compassion that is the wisdom aspect of grief. It's actually the truth of grief. Because as we know, everything in our lives will pass. Our lives will pass. We will die. But the love that we have in our life. That is transcendent. That comes from the divine. That is the purpose of life, really, truly. And so to see how grief, now we're with this grief sensation, but to see how it is love, it is sweet love. Just that frees us. Because now we don't have to push the grief away. We can be with it. We can be with it as it is. We don't have to fight what's happening. We don't have to deny what's happening. We don't have to hide or stick our heads in the sand and ignore what's happening. We have the courage to face it and be with it and recognize the divine in it. No matter how terrible the story is. And then I'll finish with the practice that I did with the other video, the shorter video. And but this sitting with the grief and feeling the love, you can just do that. You don't have to do the second part. But the second part is a good way of finishing any practice, any contemplative meditation practice, because it comes also from the Tibetans. It's a sending and taking practice called Tonglen in Tibetan. And it's a way of cultivating love and compassion. And so what we'll do is we'll breathe in and feel grief or any suffering that you might feel. Feel it in your body, but breathe it in to your heart space. And imagine that the thick, dark clouds of smoke of the suffering are entering into your heart, which is infinite, like space. In fact, it's more infinite than space because the awareness of that your heart is, the space of awareness contains physical space, and physical space is the whole universe. So consciousness transcends even the limits of the universe. It contains it. This space is infinite. And you breathe in that black, thick cloud of smoke, of grief, into that infinite space, where it's transformed into the clear white light of love and compassion. And then you breathe out that clear white light of love and compassion to all the cells of your body, filling your whole body from the crown of your head through your fingertips to the toes of your feet, everywhere in between, with that clear white light of boundless love and compassion. So do that with me. Breathing in, clouds of smoke, dark, black, thick, into the heart space, infinite love, infinite space, clear white light. And breathing out all the cells of your body, that love and compassion like liquid, clear nectar, the ambrosia of consciousness itself, in love with all of creation. And finish with a heartfelt wish or prayer that all beings may be relieved of suffering. All beings may have joy, peace, and happiness. Taking on the suffering of all beings into that infinite, clear sky of awareness. And breathing out love and compassion infinitely throughout the 10 directions, the 3 times. So those are 2 practices that I recommend for working with grief. They take us directly to the transcendental heart of awareness and the truth of love and compassion. And they will also help boost your lung qi, boost your immune system, help you fight off whatever might be coming your way, and also promote peace, joy, and happiness throughout your community in the world and the cosmos. So I hope that was useful. And again, if there are any comments or questions, feel free to shoot them my way. Until next time, peace be with you.